All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Stephen Hall. Stephen, welcome. So awesome to have you today.
Thank you, Kevin, for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Absolutely. I am too. And I know you and we got to connect before. And I want to start off. I don't need to. I want to start off by just giving a shout out to Charles Bird. He was the one that connected you and and I am so grateful for that guy. Him and I have become close friends over the years. And, anytime Charles says, Kevin, you should talk with somebody about having them on your show or what have you. Whenever Charles gives a recommendation like that, it just carries the highest weight with me. And I would imagine it does for you too, Steve. And it's just a testament to the power of relationships, which is, of course, what this podcast is all about.
Yeah, I agree, Kevin. I want to thank Charles for the introduction as well. I've known Charles for the last 18 months, actually longer than that, 2 or 3 years now. Wow, time flies. So I've known Charles for over 3 years, and we, like you said, Charles and I have become friends, and now I'm part of his mastermind, his Flow Mastermind. It's an incredible group of people that are like-minded, like you, Kevin, and it's been great working with Charles as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, what I'd like to do is I want to start, Stephen, but I want to turn it over to you so that we can set some context here and that you can share with our listeners. I want you to share a little bit about, what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you do and the impact you're making in the world. And let's just start there, Stephen.
Sure, sure. So what do I do? I'm an enrolled agent by trade, an accountant. We have an accounting firm called Robert Holland Associates, and we help landlords and business owners and fund managers with their tax filings. We handle over 2,000 landlords, 3,500 companies, and 8,000 families with their
Wow.
tax filings. And as a result of that experience, I've helped clients negotiate some of their business trade sales, set up joint ventures, set up uh, marketing plans, business plans. I mean, you name it, or help them also to find capital or to advise them on how to structure their deal so that way they can get the right capital. I'm not an attorney, but I'm more on the tax side, advising how to structure those vehicles, and it's exciting. I mean, I don't practice as much anymore. I've got a great team that do all the work, but it is a lot of fun to help clients and companies go from their idea all the way to their goals of whether to have a beautiful lifestyle company that could pay for their family's legacy,
Mhm.
or an entrepreneur that wants to create the idea all the way to getting bought out or going public.
Yeah. Wow. Very cool. So, with serving that many clients and not only that, the diversity of kind of clients you serve, and I'm sure you could come up with tons of examples, but what is an example of one of your clients that you serve that you were just like really incredibly proud of the impact that you've been able to have on? You don't have to necessarily share their name, but just kind of what's the situation like?
Well, I've got a great story. I received a thank you note yesterday. I'll just
Okay.
read. It said, "Dear Stephen and Claudia, Claudia's my wife.
Okay.
From the very beginning, it was you who helped us form the backbone of Lino Music Society, which is a nonprofit. It's called Lino Music Society, a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. I helped Kimberly, the founder, and her husband, Roger, get the setup. She said, thank you for believing in us, our vision, and the seriousness of the impact we wanted to make in El Salvador. Now, to think 5 years later, there will be a national school of music in every state of El Salvador that will be free to all ages. The government, El Salvador, saw the value and impact. We couldn't be more thrilled. Thank you again for standing by us in creating everlasting change for so many families and their futures. It's because of you. With gratitude, Kim and Roger Lino.
Wow.
So the Lino Music Society was literally a program where we raise money here in the United States, and one of the program wants to provide music education to the less unfortunate, to the folks of El Salvador. And it just started out, think of like a YMCA type organization, but concentrated on music, where we would fly the resources down to El Salvador to give these folks, this population, a chance to express their excitement in the arts. And then it literally went from that kind of a brainstorming session to now what you just heard. We have a national program that's been kicked off in that country.
Wow. Wow. You know, I'm gonna tell you what, that is absolutely amazing. And I can assure you with it when you started off talking about what you do, that people didn't get that image in their mind.
No.
But wow, now that we got it, man, I mean, that is absolutely beautiful. And like as you're reading that message that they sent you, man, I'm feeling every bit of that. How awesome has that got to feel for you, for the role that you had in helping that become a reality, not only for that couple, but for all these peoples whose lives are going to be impacted. That you know what, Stephen, you will never meet most of those people, but that's powerful.
It gives you so much gratitude and joy because the work I do, when I meet a family or a founder, I really think about that. I think about, okay, what you're going to do. It's great that you're creating the next widget you're selling Amazon or the next property you're going to build or develop. But I really think about that. It's like, okay, what kind of impact are you going to make on your workforce, on your family, on your clientele, on your supply chain?
Yeah,
And how is that going to impact you for not just today, but next year, but in a decade, in 20 years?
yeah,
And in this music society example, I never thought in a million years we were going to be able to take a US nonprofit, plug it into El Salvador to model a program for the whole country of El Salvador, to expand it across every state to help every child in that country with a music program.
yeah,
And it feels really good because a lot of these kids don't have a structured program to go to in that country. They just don't have the resources.
yeah,
And what the Linos were able to do in that country is just profound because it's like the birth of a YMCA or a Boys and Girls Club for the country centered around music. And never in a million years did I think a tax structure would evolve all the way to helping potentially hundreds of thousands of children every year and potentially millions and millions of kids over the next 20 years.
yeah, yeah. Wow. That is phenomenal. That is, I mean, that is absolutely inspirational, And I'm sure you probably got a few people thinking like, yeah. I mean, that's a whole lot more than talking about taxes and bookkeeping.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. But that's what it takes. I mean, we're all in the people business. I mean, no matter what business you're in, you always need a checking account to calculate what your money is coming in and what money's going out. But it comes down to the people and the resources and what your goals are because it's because a lot of us get stuck, right? Where you start a business and then you're just going through the motions of running a bakery or running a consulting practice where you almost have to pause and say, wait, what am I doing here? What's my 5 year plan? And how do I want to take my business from where it is today to where I want to go tomorrow? And at the same token, how do I keep the money? Because it's not what we make, it's what we keep.
Yeah.
And that's what we do is we help plan that strategic plan. So that way you keep more of those dollars for yourself rather than just give it out to the government.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Amen. So good. Okay. So now that we've got a little bit of context set and now it's really clear that you do so much more than taxes and man, now Stephen, for me personally, I just want to hear more about some of your other clients. I mean, we won't do that right here on this interview, but now I'm looking forward to getting to know you a lot better and just hearing a lot more about the kind of work you do because that is inspiring for sure. So thank you for sharing that. Um, let's switch gears just a
Sure.
little bit. And I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of our listeners. So, Stephen, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons. And Stephen, I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's two people.
Okay.
Um, the first is my father, Bob Hall. My father started out as a teacher in a history teacher in Glendale Unified in California, and he decided to open up an accounting firm. So he took the concept of teaching and building a curriculum and teaching students to the tax industry to teach his clients how the tax system works to build a foundation. And he taught me everything I know today. But what was unique though is that he didn't teach it from the standpoint of being technical. He taught it from the standpoint of being a teacher, where you still have to worry about your students, your the parents of the students, as well as the administrators of the school system. So I learned you have many different stakeholders that are involved in every client, and uh, and it's important to factor in all those stakeholders whenever you're advising a case or you're studying a case or you're trying to solve a problem for a case.
Okay.
And that was profound because many folks in the accounting profession, they have their blinders on and they're just focused on what's in front of them on paper, not
Mhm.
realizing there's this whole universe around them that you have to factor in, whether it's their family, the government, the regulators. I'm not just talking about the IRS. I'm talking about, let's say, for example, if you're in the food industry, you got to deal with the health department.
Mhm.
You got to deal with the local city permitting for your restaurant, things of that nature, or workman's comp for your workforce.
Mhm.
For from an insurance perspective. Just that's just on the compliance side. Then you got to factor in how to motivate your workforce, how to grow the business, how to attract customers,
Mhm.
and how to make a profit, all under one shingle. That's a lot of moving parts
Yeah.
when you think about it
Yeah.
for a business owner. So that's the first phase of my life that I learned from my father, Bob Hall. The second person, his name's Kevin Wilson. Kevin Wilson is the founder of a company called Sterling Management. Sterling is what really gave me the big picture of what it takes to take a business from an unstructured plan with a few employees all the way to where you could scale to 10,000 employees, 100,000 employees, doesn't matter the head count, but being able to systematize your programs. And more importantly, on the human element side, being able to help people, being able to understand that every employee are not going to necessarily be motivated that day, not because you're not motivating them, because they're worried about their grandparent that's getting sick. They have a child home from school because the school burned down. This is what happened in California last week. There's a whole segment of the population where mom and dad are busy right now. The school burned down. They got to take care of their kids, and their house burned down. They have to find temporary housing.
Yeah.
So you can have a lot of variables that come into the equation when you're trying to run a business that you have to be mindful of, when you're trying to motivate a workforce.
Yeah.
And Kevin definitely opened my eyes on that. And also just on how you could apply a specific business model of managing a workforce in any industry. And it's the same because people are people. But then once you understand that people are people, whether you're a bakery or a law firm or an accounting firm or a coaching business, you can follow the same methodologies to have a successful, profitable business.
Okay. Gotcha. So if you look, I want you to consider, I mean, you shared a really wonderful example with this music school and stuff, and I know there's a lot more examples. I want to frame this just a little bit different. But if you look at an example where you personally you got to make a really substantial impact, where maybe even when that happened, it might have even surprised you a little bit, and yet you also know that that would have never happened if not for it could have been either your relationship with your dad or your relationship with Kevin. What is an example of something like that, Stephen?
As far as an impact I made on somebody, or they made on me,
An
or
impact that you made on somebody else that was really substantial that would not have happened, would have never happened if not for it was either your relationship with Kevin or your relationship with your dad.
I would say because of the relationship with Kevin, I've learned just pay it forward, just help your workforce as much as possible.
Okay.
Uh, one of the gentlemen, Daniel, I helped out. I educated him on how to buy rental property, for example.
Okay.
And as a result of that, he bought a rental every other year. And now he's able to have a substantial net worth that he would have never had if it wasn't
Yeah.
for the concept of buying a rental every other year,
Yeah.
something of that nature.
Yeah.
Just paying it forward, just motivating your workforce, getting them excited about life.
Yeah.
Another example, there was another employee that was not too excited to be an accountant, so he wanted to uh, be a pilot. So we said, well, great. Let's help you with the schedule so that way you can become a pilot. And even though we want him to be in a full-time accountant,
Hmm.
he said my heart's not in it, but he's still there helping us at work with the company until he's hired by FedEx or one of those cargo type companies as a full-time pilot. So there's just stories like that are exciting because then you build a nice community of alumni within
Yeah.
your ecosystem that always give back or pay it forward with their folks as well.
That is really phenomenal, Stephen, that you have somebody on your team who is just their heart isn't in being an accountant and they express their desire to become a pilot. And then you, as a company, fully support them in that, knowing that I'm going to support them in this and they're going to be leaving us at some point here.
Yep.
Um, that is really, really, a lot of employers might look at that and go, what? So what has come of that particular relationship, Stephen, since then?
Well, there's a lot of loyalty, right? Because now he wants to help out, and because pilots have a lot of time off throughout the year, so he'll still help out as a seasonal employee, and while he's gonna expand his career as a pilot, and also and he's got lifelong friendships from the workforce as well, because our turnover is very low as an organization, and that's key in order because we're in the people business, when you're helping advise all these clients over decades of time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow, wow. This has been really phenomenal. And I'm going to be completely blunt, Stephen. I was, I knew it was going to be a good conversation because after our last conversation, but I was just so pleasantly surprised at just some of the things that you've shared because I think it's a lot in a lot of companies this kind of thing is not happening, but yet it is in your guys' company because of how you view relationships and the value that you place on relationships, and not just relationships with your client, but relationships with your team, with your staff, as well. And man, I mean, what a difference that makes. And, you know, um, I thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. I really appreciate it. It was very unique and very powerful too. Um, any any else you feel led to share before we kind of start winding down and stuff?
Sure, all I would share is that it's all about communication. So when you have a good company, or even if you're starting out, the important thing is to pick up the phone and talk to someone
Yeah,
to make sure you're structured properly, or to make sure you're expanding or making the appropriate strategic steps to minimize your tax liability. Because no one can read your mind. So if you're not sure if you're doing it properly, or if don't have a plan, pick up the phone and get that plan going, because that's the key. You got to be proactive. Otherwise, the government's just going to take your money. And
yeah,
the government has something called the tax code. Well, the tax code means that you could demystify it, decodify it. You could decode the tax code so that way you can minimize the amount of tax you
yeah.
pay the government. But the key is you got to be proactive to do it, not reactive. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. 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 Wow. Well, for anybody listening to this, Stephen, going, man, Kev, I really like the way Stephen shows. I really appreciate the way Stephen summers up. And maybe there's some folks now going, you know what, man, maybe it would be good for me to talk with Stephen or with somebody on his team. Any resources we can share, any websites that we can share when we release the podcast episode here, Stephen?
Absolutely. It's roberthalltaxes.com is
Okay.
the email. And the phone number is you just call our office phone number 818-242-4888.
Okay.
And on the website, you could just click on the one of the boxes to give one of our associates a call or hit us up on a message on the website, and we'll be more than happy to help you.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Stephen, once again, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. Really appreciate it and really appreciate you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.